when we're aligned with spiritual law, with love, and with everything good, that perfect pattern has a chance to emerge into our awareness. So this morning, our lesson is supposed to be about another spiritual driving goggle lens called the lens of perfection. And Spirit has an interesting sense of humor, let me just say that, because from a human perspective, the days leading up to this lesson have been filled with some small things and some big things that would be considered far from perfect. Shall I elaborate? Right. So first of all, I woke up Friday morning with a wicked toothache. All right, so it looks like I'm headed into some dental surgery some point this week in the next few days, and my physical human self is not thinking this is anything near perfect, right? And also on Friday, Susan shared with me about Mort's passing, and my heart just kind of flooded with mixed emotions, as I'm sure hers did as well, but mostly just sadness that the world lost this vibrant, funny, loving person, right? And on the human level, this kind of loss is really hard to see as perfect. And we as a community are saying farewell and bon voyage to Heather and Rich this morning, and this kind of major change in a spiritual family. To accept that as perfect is pretty hard, and we're going to miss them a lot, right? So as I'm doing this last minute prep for this talk, I realized that I had some interesting and really very real human experiences to address for illustrative purposes for this lesson. And of course, as I said, this lesson is tied to my earlier May lesson about my police officer friend, Pat Cochalone, who was shot 6 times and left with brain damage. And by the way, if you haven't seen that lesson, it's called Get Your Driving Goggles, and it's on YouTube. And my lessons since that Sunday have all been about looking at life and even really, really hard things from a spiritual perspective. So over the month of May, I've been talking about different spiritual lenses that help us see our human experiences from a spiritual perspective. And the first lens we talked about was the lens of forgiveness. And we learned how powerfully freeing forgiveness can be, no matter how big the experiences are. And then we looked at the lens of spiritual identity, which is about seeing ourselves as a soul going through everything on the human level. Everything that life has to offer, it's really our soul's lessons and things that are happening, and seeing the universe that we live in from a spiritual perspective as a spiritual place. And the third lens we talked about was the lens of cause and effect. And we learned about looking at our choices as causes and everything that happens after that as effects. And when we can look at things through that lens, we can see where we can make different choices and have different experiences. And today, the lens of perfection is the final lens that I want to introduce in our driving goggles analogy, and that's the lens of this day. So first of all, I want to clear up the definition of perfection. This is what Webster says it is. Perfection is the condition, state, or quality of being free or as free as possible from all flaws or defects. Flaws. So when I think about the human stuff that I led into this lesson with, physical pain, the loss of a loved one, significant change, I realize that this definition of perfection does leave room for things to be perfect, because none of these situations I talked about are flawed or defective. They're just normal and very real human experiences, right? So now you know that the foundation of the teaching of the science of mind is that the entire universe that we live in is God. Everything is seen or unseen as spirit taking form. And if that's true, and can we all agree that God is perfect? Yes, we can agree God is perfect. Doesn't it logically make sense that then, therefore, everything is perfect? Here's a quote from our founder, Ernest Holmes. He says, "There is a perfect pattern of your being or real spirit of you, which is as eternal as God, as indestructible as reality with a capital R, and as changeless as truth with a capital T." What he's saying is that human experiences, even those that are really don't like, render our souls still perfect. Nothing changes the perfection of our souls. Our soul is eternal, indestructible, and unchangeable. It is our challenge to align our identity with that perfection within. Pure Ernest Holmes, right? So I thought, if Ernest Holmes is saying that, and what he did was find the thread of truth through all other spiritual traditions, could I find a reference to that saying that all is perfect? Is it just Holmes, or did other spiritual teachings say that? So Paramahansa Yogananda, a Hindu master, made this very bold statement once. He said, there is not even one thing in this world that is not perfect. You know, he had to be referring to a spiritual perspective, because as everyday human beings, we can take offense at hard things being referred to as perfect, you know. I'm sure that you've heard the saying, it's all good, man, it's all good. Well, let me tell you, when I was sitting in my house on Friday crying from this tooth, I'm telling you it was awful, I was definitely not thinking it was all good, right? I know Pat Coachalone shot 6 times. She was not thinking it's all good. She wasn't. And when we all take it up another notch and say it's perfect, now that's a really difficult one to accept, right? But what if we could put on these driving goggles of the lens of perfection? What if we could put them firmly in place? Because when we're wearing the lens of perfection, we not only say it, we can believe it and live by those words. Because through enough spiritual practice, I began to understand that underneath all the appearance of wrong or bad, everything was happening exactly as it should happen. The moment did contain wholeness, even if I had to work really hard to find it, right? I mean, think about it. Isn't it just our human preferences or our expectations that make something good or not good, or perfect or imperfect? And isn't it within our power to give meaning to an experience? Aren't we the ones calling it good or bad, hard or easy, perfect or imperfect? That's on us, right? So what I found is that the spiritual practice of seeing the road of life as perfect starts first by looking in your rearview mirror. Often it starts there first. So how many times have you called a thing a bad thing, but then turn around and look at it later and realize it actually fit into the wholeness of your life really pretty well? You know, like the unexpected firing from a job that led you to another one that was just so much better, right? Or maybe a car accident that totaled the car that you love so much, but then when you look back from your new snazzy car, you realize, well, that one wasn't really that awesome, right? Those are the kinds of like hindsight moments, 20/20 vision, that we look back and say, oh, maybe it was a good thing, right? And there's an old Buddhist story, speaking of other spiritual traditions, and it goes like this. He says, there once was an old Zen farmer, and every day the farmer used a horse to help work his fields and keep his farm healthy. But one day the horse ran away, and all the villagers came by and said, we're so sorry to hear about this. That is such a bad thing. But the farmer responded, bad thing? Good thing? Who knows? And the villagers were confused. They decided to ignore him. And a few weeks later, they went by, and one afternoon when the farm was working outside, he looked up and he saw his horse running back. But the horse was not alone. He was bringing back a whole herd of horses. So now the farmer had 10 horses to help work his fields. And all the villagers came by to congratulate the farmer and said, wow, this is such a good thing. But the farmer responded, good thing? Bad thing? Who knows? So a few weeks later, the farmer's son came over to visit to help his dad. And when trying to tame one of the horses, the farmer's son fell off the horse and broke his leg. And the villagers came by to commiserate and said, how awful, this is such a bad thing. Just as he did every other time, the farmer responded, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And a month later, the farmer's son was still recovering. He wasn't able to do any of the manual labor or help his father around the farm. And then a regiment from the army came by through town, conscripting every able-bodied young man to join the army. And when the regiment came to the farmer's house and saw the young boy's broken leg, they marched right past and left him lying there. And of course, all the villagers came by and said, amazing, this is such good news. You are so fortunate. And you know the farmer's response by now. Good news, bad news, who knows, right? So we're all going to run into things along the road of life and be tempted to immediately say, this is a good thing, this is a bad thing. But when you view life from the long game perspective, and we put on our spiritual lens of perfection, we can claim in advance of knowing how everything will unfold, it's perfect, right? And just like the farmer in the story, there will always be villagers around who are going to come help you label and sort your experiences as good or bad, quick to judge the human stuff and make a call before the end of the play, right? It reminds me of the movie, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. You know that saying? It says, in the end, everything will be okay, and if it's not okay, it's not the end, right? That's a good one. Right? In the end, everything's going to be okay. If it's not okay, it's not the end. So when you know that every experience you have is a part of the perfect pattern of your evolving, your spiritual growth, your healing, you begin to understand the power of the lens of perfection. And when you get practiced at looking in the rear view mirror and noticing how perfectly everything lined up to bring you to this current moment of wholeness, we get to start seeing the now moment. Now, what's right in front of your windshield, right now. It's all unfolding here as perfect and whole. Holmes said there's a perfect pattern, and it's unfolding right here and right now. The moment is whole, but I have to align myself with the truth in my own thoughts and beliefs, because unless I can see it, I can't see it, right? I can't see the wholeness unless I'm willing to see it, because if I'm constantly judging everything as flawed or wrong or not right, you're not going to ever see the perfection, right? Because what we look for, we find. So then when we can see the past and the present moment as perfect, we have the opportunity to look ahead down the road with greater surrender and acceptance that the road ahead will also bring us to wholeness and unfold perfectly for us. So when you're in awe of like the synchronicity of life, you're wearing the lens of perfection. It's truly happening all for you. And through spiritual practice, you can experience living with the view of life that it is perfect. And I may have big things to learn, but this is the perfect way to learn them. But I know you're thinking of things in your life right now that are very hard to see through the lens of perfection. What about this, Laine? What about this? What about this? Here's what I offer you about looking through the lens of perfection. As I said, Holmes asserts that there's a perfect pattern to everything, every relationship, every conversation, every cell in your body. And when we're aligned with spiritual law, with love, and with everything good, that perfect pattern has a chance to emerge into our awareness. We're invited to see the perfection regardless of the appearance that anything seems to be imperfect. But we have to show up in that situation, in that conversation, in that relationship, doing our part to unfold that wholeness and perfection. And when we do that without fail, life orders itself around that perfect pattern that's available. If we stay in our human disappointment, anger, resistance, and all of that, we can't open ourselves to seeing a bigger possibility. So here's another story. So you know that Terry and I just got back from a trip out west to Seattle, and then we went on to Hawaii. And on that trip, there was this example that I want to share about looking at life through the lens of perfection and doing my part to reveal that perfection. So remember earlier I said that we call things perfect or imperfect depending on our own preferences and our own expectations that we want. So our final 3 nights of the trip, we peeled off from our friends and went to Kauai by ourselves. We're checking into our Airbnb, and the arrival instructions were not very clear. Let's put it that way. And we couldn't find our place. And you have to know it was the hottest hour of the day. I think we were like 2 to 3 o'clock or something. We were 3 to 4. It was hot. Let me say it was hot. And when we finally found our unit and unlocked it, the first thing we noticed was, Jesus Christ, it's hot in here. It is so hot. We got to get the thermostat. We got to turn the air down. We talked about thermostats in our Sacred Cup this morning. And we were looking around, and we realized there is no air conditioning. There is no air conditioning. And all I could think about was how imperfect the next 3 nights were going to be, you know. And I got a little off-center, y'all. I was just a little bit. And so knowing that I had to do this lesson on perfection, I thought it might be a good moment to get my goggles out and kind of soften my judginess and attitude and see if I could see some wholeness in the whole situation. So, at any rate, we flung open the doors on both sides, and quite quickly, honestly, we were enjoying these beautiful trade winds that blow in Hawaii, and everything was through our space. And I kid you not, we never thought about the AC again, or the lack thereof, for that matter, because the doors were open the entire time, and we could just appreciate, the fragrant breeze of Hawaii. It's just beautiful. But it takes practice to interrupt that human pattern of judgy and hot and not good and being angry and whatever. Angry at myself because I didn't read the description very carefully. But it takes practice to put the lenses on. But if I'm going to invite my life to be as good as it can be, then I've got to do my part to see it that way, right? I've got to relax in the moment and stop resisting what is. Only then can I find the solution or balance the situation for the good to flood in. And when I accept the unwanted thing and find the wisdom of the farmer, good news, bad news, who knows, I'm in my center and I can make choices that align with the best outcome. I can open the doors, right? So wearing the lens of perfection, I could be grateful that I already had a dentist appointment scheduled for May 27th, the day after Memorial Day, and know that I'm going to receive care with this tooth quickly. I could relax and find a poem to honor Mort, right? I could drop into my joy that Heather and Rich manifested this amazing retirement plan and wish them well. So that's my job to do. My job is to get back into my center and open to find the next step for me. And as I was open to receiving information that I could share during this talk this morning, I noticed that an old coworker friend of mine had posted on her Facebook page something quite related to this topic. Sarah writes, "It has been 1 year today since I was diagnosed with Bell's palsy." Do you know what Bell's palsy is, where your side of your face goes numb? Yeah, right. And she writes, "I will never forget that day. I felt like it changed my life forever. I was terrified. I never would have guessed 1 year later I still would have damage from Bell's palsy. Everyone told me it would go back to normal, that it gets better in 6 months. It has gotten better, and most people today say they can't tell I have it, but I can tell. I feel it every day. I could have some permanent damage, but honestly, as much as I wish this didn't happen to me, I am somehow grateful it did. I am on my journey to be my healthiest self. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm more aware than ever. I'm so grateful to all my friends and family who have given me nothing but love and support during this journey. I love myself more than ever and don't think I have ever taken this many selfies." And then she laughs, right? So at first glance, something horrible had happened to Sarah. But now she sees it as good for her. It's that rear view mirror to present moment to looking at the future. Even if I have permanent damage, I'm grateful that this has happened to me. So how does this lens of perfection tie all the way back to Pat Coachalone and her shooting, right? If you remember that Sunday, there was a video. Do you remember the video that she recorded for us? And she pointed out all the gifts that came from her experience of being shot. And all along, she had been unable to see those gifts. She couldn't consider that this experience had been for her. But once she released the grip of anger on the entire thing, the gifts began to reveal themselves to her. And there have been so many gifts, and her life has taken so many positive turns. She would likely say that it was kind of perfect, right? Would she have chosen to be wounded in this way and have her life turned inside out as it did? No. But with some spiritual exploration and perspective shifting, she certainly has her spiritual driving goggles in place now in her life. And her story is the same as the Buddhist farmer, as the same as our AC in Hawaii, as the same as Sarah's case of Bell's palsy, the same as my tooth situation, the same as all loss in life. There was wholeness in each situation waiting to be revealed. So are you ready to try on the lens of perfection in your life? My suggestion is you look at your past first. Look there first. Can you take something that unfolded for you and be mentally flexible enough to see how it really contributed to some good in your life? Here are some questions to ask yourself. Was there a skill I developed that came out of my response to this thing? Are there relationships that formed that I may never have experienced if it weren't for this thing that happened? Are there aspects of my life that actually improved as a result of choices I made around the event? Because as the answer to those questions and countless others come forth, try not to argue about how much you lost from the changes that happened. And if you find yourself kind of stuck in the losses and unable to see the good, it's okay. You might still be grieving or processing, and that's perfect too. Just keep the lens of perfection lying close by, because there may be one day when you're ready to take them up and find a new perspective. And as Pat will tell you, sometimes that can take nearly 20 years. 20 years. So if you do this work enough with your past experiences, you're going to be able to develop that farmer's wisdom about things happening right now. Let's see how the wholeness unfolds for me, how the blessings reveal themselves perfectly. And eventually, with enough practice, you can hold the faith for whatever the road brings. You'll still remain a perfect soul. So those are driving goggles. And as I drive with these spiritual goggles on, I look at others with more compassion. And I accept my life with a greater sense of trust, and I surrender to the divine flow of good. I look within to my inner voice and my intuition for the guidance I need, and I see spirit in everything, everything. So in closing, Holmes says this: if you can see God in everything, then God will look back at you through everything. So even in the most challenging of human experiences, you can be like the farmer and say, good thing, bad thing, who knows, and wait for Spirit to reveal the good. Will you pray with me? Oh, as I go within, I'm so grateful for the knowing that all is well, that as life shows up for me, there is a wholeness that's available to me always. I know that Spirit meets me on the path as it does each and every person hearing this prayer. That as we encounter hard or challenging things in our lives, that Spirit's right there, ready to reveal the blessings and the wholeness and the balance and the order that is inherently a part of every situation, of every moment. And I give thanks for that. I give thanks for the revelation of those moments of wholeness for each person. I'm thankful for each person here and for the opportunity to speak my word in front of this group of lovely, lovely people. I'm thankful for this community. I let it go and I let it be. And so it is. And so it is. Thank you.
I am so grateful.